let's chat birth books. Now, this is one of, I think, the most overwhelming topics when it comes to prepping for labor, birth, all things pregnancy, because the number of books that are available is kind of insane. So how do you narrow it down? How do you pick which books to prioritize your time and to spend your time reading? And honestly, it comes down to what you want your birth to look like. Personally, we did a home birth for our first birth, and we are prepping for a home birth again for birth number 2 that will happen later in the year, later this year in 2024. So these are some books that I have really liked that kind of focus on that idea of birthing at home or in a birth center, or somewhere where you're kind of leaning more into, not using interventions and working with a midwife and really, putting faith in your body and leaning into that. So if that's the kind of books you would like to read also, then you would like some of the ones I'm going to show you today. Now, some of these I do have on my audiobook, so I'll pop up a little graphic of what those look like. One of my favorites is Ina May Gaskin's Guide to Childbirth. If you haven't heard of Ina May, then I highly recommend looking into her story. And it tells a lot of her backstory in the book. So it's really fun to read about her journey as a midwife and how many women she helped. But my favorite part about this book is it breaks down a lot of specific birth stories. And in all of these stories, things tend to go crazy and hit the fan, but they tell it from such a positive viewpoint. And our mindset is so important when it comes to how our birth goes and how our labor goes. So it's so important that we hear stories of these positive birth stories that didn't go perfectly. And, we can plan and plan and plan, but we all know that each of our, kind of birth outcomes is going to be unique. So we need to essentially train our mind to look at it from a positive vantage point and see the good in all of those outcomes. And this one I really enjoyed. Third trimester, I essentially read a birth story kind of every night, just hearing other birth stories and seeing what other women were doing. And it just put my head in a really good headspace. So if you're looking for a nighttime read, highly recommend this one. This one I'll keep it forever, Another one that I really like, this is a newer one I got for this pregnancy. This is by Aviva Ram, and I know she has a really big presence online, so some of you might have heard of her before. I was curious as to what her book brought that was kind of unique, how it might be different, and I've really enjoyed a lot of pieces of it. I'm going to go over a couple other guides that I like a little bit more than hers, but I love hers also. And I'm kind of a fan of having, quite a few on deck. Hers, she really breaks down some great herbal suggestions. She breaks down specific situations you might run into. If you run into these are some ways to work through it. It's just a really good guidebook, and it's a very easy read. So this is just a great one to kind of read throughout your pregnancy. It'll take you through every stage, talk about foods to eat, proteins to eat, what to prioritize movement-wise, how to troubleshoot through aches, pains, all the things. Those of you that have watched my other videos, you know that I'm a chiropractor and I work with women who go through all the phases. And, we spend our time talking about how to work with your body as your body goes through all of those transitions. And I feel like she did a good job of really breaking down a lot of options for things to do when those come up. The third one, I'll have to put up an image. This was a new one that I grabbed this time, and I think it might be my favorite of all of them. The Ina May Gaskin is my favorite for birth stories, but Home Birth on Your Own Terms, and it's by Heather Baker. I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget names. Home Birth on Your Own Terms. I did the audiobook because I have an Audible account and I had an extra credit. I will likely probably also buy the hardcover because after listening to the audiobook, it reads very much like a textbook. So it would be nice to have the visual aspect of it. I would like to be able to underline some things, and I'm very much the type that underlines and post-it notes and makes easy ways to go back to it. But for now, I'm doing the audiobook, and this book is more detailed than any other book I've ever ventured into for birth. Essentially, the author is a midwife, and her book is essentially designed to help you prepare yourself if you were to want to free birth. And if you've never looked into free birth, it's essentially, birthing on your own and educating yourself on how to be prepared for that, ready for that. And, it takes you through. She goes into details on things that I've never read in any other book. And I am a person who loves all the details. Even though we are doing, our plan again is a home birth with a midwife. Last time it was 2 midwives that came to assist. So we plan on having assistance here, but I, educate all of the moms that I work with. I think it's so important that we educate ourselves as if we did have to do it by ourselves, because you never know. We can plan and plan and plan, but you never really know how your birth is going to go. We hear all the time about women giving birth in the car and giving birth in crazy places. And it seems like those stories always, turn out so positive. But, everyone panics over the idea of no one else being there to assist with it. I had to pop out for a quick second because my little one woke up and then she fell back asleep. So we're back. But with the Home Birth on Your Own Terms, like I said, she kind of teaches you essentially how to birth by yourself. And I tell a lot of moms that I work with, this is a great resource so that not only, if you were ever in that situation, you would be more prepared, but also it helps you that when things come up, because things are always going to come up during birth and labor, it's just part of it, that you have a more educated stance on what is happening. And it will help you to make better informed decisions on how you want that, situation to be handled. So personally, that's something I value so much. And I have enjoyed this book thoroughly, prepping for this next birth that we have coming up. So it can be a little bit pricier to buy the hardback. When I was looking into it, I was thinking it was somewhere near almost $50. And at first I was a little off put by it, but now that I've heard the audiobook, and like I said, it reads very much like a textbook, and I think it is very much valued at what it is worth. So I will, like I said, be also getting the hardback of that one. If that's kind of something that you see in your birth planning, I highly recommend checking that one out. Another one that I don't have the physical book of, I'm out of breath from running downstairs and back, is called Well-Adjusted Babies. So Well-Adjusted Babies is another one that I've really enjoyed. And that one, so if I had to rank them, it's another one that's very much like a guidebook, like the Aviva Romm book, like the Heather Baker book. This one I would also put in that subset of troubleshooting and how to, and things to expect, and how to eat properly, how to nourish your body properly. These all cover those topics so well and so in depth. The Home Birth on Your Own Terms, I think, goes into it the most detailed. Well-Adjusted Babies probably goes into it second best detailed. And then I would do the Natural Pregnancy book as third on that list. But again, I think they're all 3 really great books. But if I had to rank them, if you wanted that, that's how I would put them. I know that Mama Natural also has a book. I sign up personally for her weekly emails of, your emails of you're at 20 weeks, this is what to expect. And I really like her breakdown for how she does her emails, it really is more natural minded, and it's not using fear tactics, and it's, you know, giving you some advice on, do we actually need this, or should we think of this as more of an option as you go through, you know, that pregnancy period. I haven't purchased her book, so I don't have any feedback on that. I've heard really great things, but I haven't read it personally myself. That would be another one that I would maybe venture into getting if I, you know, I'm always looking to buy more books. That's probably the next one I would look into buying on my personal list. Another one I liked, Spiritual Midwifery. This is another Ina May Gaskin book. This one has more birth stories and just more midwifery stories. And I think it's just another book that gets, you know, it helps put your mind in a really good headspace. And I think all throughout pregnancy, especially third trimester, as you're prepping for labor, as you're prepping for postpartum, as you're prepping for all of those periods, your mindset, you know, is one of the most important things. So you really have to watch, what are you reading and what are you watching? And I have some moms that I work with who, you know, completely cut social media out those last couple weeks and really hone in on what are they allowing into their minds and what are they allowing into their subconscious. And I think the more we really work on prioritizing that and, you know, focusing on what energy is able to be absorbed into us as we're building up to this huge event, you know, I think it's so important that we protect that space to the best of our abilities. You can't avoid everything, but to some extent, especially when it comes to books, we get to decide, what are we exposing ourselves to? What kind of stories do I want to read? What kind of stories do I want to hear about? And like I said, that first book I talked about, the Ina May Gaskin's Guide to Childbirth, it has crazy stories, like things go wild, but the perspective that these moms tell that story from is so positive and so uplifting, and that's the kind of motivation I like going into that birth space. These are some of my favorites, and if I think of any others, I'll add them in the notes. You know, you don't want to overwhelm yourself. You want to make a manageable reading list and not go too... If you get too many resources, are you really going to put in-depth reading into any of them? So find a couple. I like to, you know, like I showed in today, I like a mix of some being birth stories and some being more of a guidebook. And I like to kind of switch up reading between the both of them throughout pregnancy to keep my mind in that good space and keep my mind educated on, okay, if this happens, this is what we could do about it. If this comes up, these are some ideas for things that we could do for troubleshooting. And, you know, all of these books, they do lean into that more natural mindset. And that's the mindset that I want. And that's what I prioritize. You get to make decisions of what your mindset is and what are your priorities, and try and kind of really match your reading to what your ideal outcomes are. You know, there's, like I said, there are so many books to choose from. But if you have kind of a similar mindset to what I do when I went into mine, then you might enjoy these books also. If you have any books that you would add to my list, please let me know in the comments, because, you know, you never know. This might not be our last pregnancy we go through. It's hard to tell. So let me know in the comments. I'm always looking for new resources, new things to check out. But thank you for being here, and happy reading, guys.